Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's review, we have got another Tavour review for you, and it's a single brewer, single style. We are jumping into a couple different beers from Urban Artifact Brewing Company today. They are based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. They do a lot of fruited sours. They'll put the style as a Midwest tart on the labels, but technically speaking, these are fruit based. Most of what I've had from them anyway, fruit-based sour or tart beers. So first today we've got Centerpiece. This is a pineapple and strawberry sour clocking in at 7.9% ABV. And they do put specific numbers as to how much of what goes in it. So I'll quickly read on the back. 1,500 pounds of pineapple and 1,500 pounds of strawberries per 30 barrel batch that they do. So they're putting a ton of fruit in each of their barrels of all this beer that they're brewing. Beer number 2 is called Fire Iron. Same thing, this is a fruited sour. This one's got guava, banana, and passion fruit. Slightly lower ABV on this one at 7.7%. And again, they tell you what they put in. This has got 1,500 pounds of pink guava, 500 pounds of banana, and 400 pounds of passion fruit, again, for a 30 barrel kind of brewing cycle. So we're looking at a ton of fruit. And their beers, no question, that I've had have been very fruit forward and a nice sour tart edge to them. Very, very delicious. I always enjoy them. So we're going to jump into 2 new ones today. Starting with Centerpiece, this is the pineapple and strawberry sour, clocking in at 7.9% ABV. Okay, so jumping right in with beer number 1, this is Urban Artifacts Centerpiece, a pineapple and strawberry fruited sour. 7.9% ABV on this one. Again, they are based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. In terms of label art, their labels are relatively understated. It's just plain, it's got their name on it, tells you what it is, and it's got their little symbol on there. And as I said, they will call these Midwest fruit tarts. So they are, obviously from the Midwest, and they are fruited and tart or sour. They also tell you on their beers, because the fruit will settle and to kind of mix it back together before you open it, to gently being the operative word, turn the can over end. So I've already done that a few times, but I'm always leery it's going to get away from me. So fingers crossed. Okay, I think we're safe. All right, let's get this poured right in the glass. There we go. Yep, that is a lovely beer. With pineapple and strawberry in there. It's roughly about the color I'd expect. Maybe I would expect a bit more red hue from the strawberry, but it looks lovely. It's got fruit mixed in, so it's going to have a cloudy appearance. It's almost impossible to completely filter out when you're using that much fruit to get it clear, so no big deal. I expect that, but yeah, it looks great otherwise. Nice kind of slightly orangey, pinky hue to it. Not much head, so to speak, which is great for sour, so let's give it a sniff. Oh, that smells really quite nice. It's actually got a pretty pronounced aroma too. Can't get it from super far away, but once you start getting anywhere near the rim, it just hits you. You smell the sour, you smell the tart, and you absolutely smell the fruit. And it for sure smells like a nice even balance of pineapple and strawberry. Perfectly frank, it smells delicious. So let's just jump right in and give it a sip. Oh, that is very good. Very fruit forward, but the sour and the tart really comes through quite clearly as well. And the way that it's finishing and the qualities that come out from the malt bill behind it, really quite nice. There's a lot to like about this beer. Okay, so first thing first, 7.9% ABV is a pretty high ABV on any beer, and certainly for a sour. In terms of body, it doesn't feel as big as a lot of beer styles at this ABV. It doesn't feel as big as an IPA in the mouth. It doesn't feel as big as a stout, but it has a lot more body and breadth to it, certainly than your average sour. I would say it's lower than you expect for the ABV, but for the style, certainly higher than I expect. It's kind of on the upper end of medium. Mouthfeel is exactly what I expect. It feels like a typical sour mouthfeel, but it does get rather creamy if you agitate it around the palate. I'm going to jump in for another sip. Big sour tart up front, slight suggestion of sweetness, and just big mouthful of pineapple and strawberry. They're really working in equal parts. I don't think one's overpowering the other at all. And it's very big and bold and pungent, and it's intense for a few seconds, and then it kind of backs off its intensity. And it's the sour and the tart back off first, and then the pineapple and strawberry is still lingering, and they start to mix with the malt bill flavors that come through, and it's got this classic Goza-like mouthfeel. It's got this classic Goza-like malt bill that comes through and pairs with the fruit. And it's got this kind of baked good undertone and that bit of dryness that makes its presence known in the mouthfeel as it finishes out the sip, which really pairs quite nice on most sours. I don't dislike it. It's kind of like the same crisp quality you get from a nice Pilsner. It has this little dry factor at the end, and it just finishes so crisply and succinctly on the back of the palate at the end of the sip. But for this one, you kind of get this nice, steady, even mix of the pineapple and the strawberry mixing with that kind of baked good quality. So it's got that kind of classic toast and crust kind of edge to it. And it finishes out that way. Each sip of this has a pretty long finish. Certainly much longer than your average sour, to be certain, especially one with a dry finish. It's just the fruit flavor is so pungent, it's just lingering around the back of the palate. I mean, there's still remnants I can taste. Strawberry and pineapple, it's still there. It's very nice, very enjoyable beer. I'm going to jump in for one more sip just for final thoughts, make sure I didn't miss anything important. Oh, it's really good. It's really good. It's all in there, doing its thing. Yep, starts to tail off intensity. Malt bill really comes up and mixes with the fruit. And it's just got this really long, slow descent. Yeah, nothing more to add that I didn't already tell you that I could think of. This is a really good beer. If you're a fan of sours and fruited sours, this is one you're going to enjoy. I'm going to take my time sipping on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get to beer number 2. This is Fire Iron. Same style, but this one's brewed with guava, banana, and passion fruit, and clocks in slightly lower ABV at 7.7%. Okay, now for the second beer of today's Urban Artifact review, we have got Fire Iron. Again, this is another fruited sour beer. This one brewed with guava, pink guava specifically, banana, and passion fruit. Slightly lower ABV on this one at 7.7%. In terms of label art, yet again, it's essentially the same as the prior, very understated, just a slightly different color. And I think I mentioned this in the intro, but the specific units of the fruit that they added in their barrels when brewing, 1,500 pounds of pink guava, 500 pounds of banana, 400 pounds of passion fruit, and that's again for a 30-barrel batch. So quite a lot of fruit goes into what they do, and their beers tend to be very flavorful and all quite a bit different. So I have not yet done the slow tip end over end to help mix this beer, so I'm going to do that now. You will notice how slowly and gently I'm doing this. It's just to get a little agitation in the can to try to mix back in some of that fruit before you open it and pour it, because it does tend to separate. It's a lot of fruit. That's why your beers normally are not going to be crystal clear. It's just too much fruit to possibly get pulled all out. But let's get this cracked gently. Okay. This one came out safely as well. Let's get this poured right in. All right, visually as I'm pouring this, this looks nearly identical to the prior. I mean, they are almost, if I had them side by side, I'm not sure I would be able to distinguish the beers from one another, but it looks great. Very, very similar color. If anything, this one maybe has a slight more reddish pinkish hue than the prior, but essentially looks the same. Very occluded, roughly the same color. Did roughly the same with the head, and it's going to get out of the way, so that looks great. Let's give this one a sniff. Yes, it does smell quite nice. I can tell you the banana I'm not really picking up. The passion fruit a little bit in the background, but it does smell quite strongly of guava, unsurprisingly, given the volume that they put in there. And there's a nice classic bit of a sour tart edge on the nose. So that's really what it smells like. It's a reasonably pronounced aroma. You've got to get kind of near the glass, but once you do, it's very easy to pick up. It's pretty pungent. So let's just jump right in, give it a sip. Oh, it's very nice. That's very nice. Another classic urban artifact. Essentially, between the two beers, if we're talking body and mouthfeel, they are essentially identical. I mean, they really, really are. It's got roughly the same body, same mouthfeel, and really the same kind of way that the flavor develops and how it hits on front. Though I could say with this beer specifically, there's a little bit more pronounced kind of funky twinge to that sour and tart up front. That's kind of the first big thing that I noticed. And massive, massive guava. So I'm going to jump back in for another sip here so I can further explore the flavor development. Big punch of sour tart, a nice bit of funk. That gets reasonably quickly out of the way, and the guava really, really rises to the front. The banana, honestly, I cannot detect anywhere in the flavor any more than I could in the aroma. The passion fruit, you can get a little bit in the flavor profile just as you could in the aroma, but frankly, the guava is overpowering the other fruit additions. If you're a big fan of guava, you'll probably really enjoy this. If you were hoping to get some banana and passion fruit in the mix, you might be a little bit disappointed because it really doesn't come through in the beer. That said, it's very tasty. It's a very good beer, and it's classic urban artifact. The sip does roughly the same thing in terms of flavor intensity and development as it did on the Centerpiece, and it really kind of lingers in the same manner. Though on the back end of this one, mixed with the guava, there's definitely still kind of a lingering tartness and a little bit of funk underneath it. So this one's got a little wilder vibe to it than the Centerpiece did, just in terms of the beer drinking experience. There's so much about this that is almost identical to the Centerpiece, just with a different flavor, but it does have its own kind of nuance. It's its own beer, make no mistake about that. So this one's wilder, it's funkier, and you can't really pick out all of the fruit additions in this one as you could in the prior, but it is still a very, very good beer. I think people that like a little more funky kind of sour would probably enjoy this one quite a bit. If you're just looking for almost the lactic or citric acid sour tart side without the funk, maybe not as much, because this does have a nice funky twinge akin to a wild ale or a Brett beer, but it's nice. I'm going to jump for one more sip and final thoughts. Yeah, that guava is so big, and that sour tart and funk up front. It's got a much bigger sour tart and funk kick on this one than the Centerpiece did. And indeed, thinking back on many of the other urban artifacts I've had, this is one of the bigger sour and funky and tart kind of in your face on the front. And it really is. It's that fruit and that slight hint of sour and the funk underneath that just kind of lingers all the way out to the end of the finish. It's very nice, very clean, classic urban artifact. I'm going to take my time, sip on this beer, count my scores, and when we come back, we will get both beers ranked from top to bottom. Okay, now that we've gotten to enjoy both beers, we're going to get them ranked, starting with the Urban Artifact Centerpiece. This is the pineapple and strawberry sour beer. They call it a Midwest fruit tart, whatever you want to term it. This one's 7.9% ABV. Again, Urban Artifact is based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Starting with the aroma on this one. It was nice. You could smell the sour, you could smell the tart, you could smell this pineapple and the strawberry, but it wasn't a particularly pronounced aroma. You had to really get down in there. Overall, it was average. It was high end. It gets a 6. For the taste, absolutely loved the taste of this beer. This was exactly as advertised. It was a pineapple and strawberry sour tart ale, and it really came through. Both the pineapple and the strawberry came through really quite evenly, and certainly paired beautifully with the sour and the tart. I gave it top marks, 10 out of 10. For the body was exactly what I expected for the style of beer and the ABV. 7.9, that's pretty high for a sour beer, and it had real presence in the mouth. It gets a 10 out of 10. Mouthfeel, same thing. Sour beers have a very unique and interesting mouthfeel. They normally don't have that big of a viscosity to them, and this one had a little more than average just due to the ABV, but it still felt very much like your average sour. You started to roll it around the palate to let the flavors move around, and it got very, very creamy, and that added a little more depth to it, so it kind of matched the ABV. I give it top marks here as well. It gets a 10 out of 10. Finish. The finish on each sip of this beer was quite long, both in terms of the sour and kind of tart still sticking around, and also in terms of the pineapple and the strawberry. Each sip just took a really, really, really long time to decay, and it just lingered in the back of the palate, much longer than average. Here, it gets top marks as well. It gets a 10 out of 10. Head and retention. Started out wanting to make a little bit of a head, immediately got out of the way. That's exactly what I want to see and what I expect on a perfectly executed head on a sour. It shouldn't be there, and it wasn't. It gets a 10 out of 10. Appearance-wise, it was a lovely beer. There's no denying that. But honestly, given that it had strawberry paired with pineapple, I did expect the strawberry to impart just a little more hint of pink or red to the overall hue of the beer. And it did not. But still, it was a lovely beer. I only docked 1 point for the absence of red color from the strawberries. It gets a 9. Balance-wise, I think they absolutely nailed the balance on this one. Equal parts pineapple and strawberry, and just the beautiful malt bill that paired with the sour tart base. I thought it was perfectly executed. I give it a 10 out of 10. Filling in the intangibles. I absolutely love this. Urban Artifact does a great job with their sour beers. They're always coming up with new and interesting flavor combinations, and this one was particularly excellent in my opinion. I loved it. It gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of this style, I nitpicked a couple categories. Appearance, okay, you could argue that. Aroma, sure, it could have been more pronounced, but overall, everything else this beer was about and how it presented itself was absolutely top tier for what it is. I thought this deserved the perfect 10 out of 10 I gave it, which brings the total score on Urban Artifact Centerpiece to a 95 out of 100. This is top tier. If you're a fan of Urban Artifact beers, if you're a fan of sours and fruited sours, this is absolutely one to seek out. Well worth your time. I highly recommend it. Moving on to beer number 2. This is the Urban Artifact Fire Iron. Pink guava, banana, and passion fruit. Slightly lower ABV at 7.7%. On this one, the aroma. The aroma is actually quite a bit more pronounced than it was on the Centerpiece that we just reviewed. It was quite a bit more pungent. You could really smell the guava, particularly a little bit of the passion fruit, but I gotta be honest, I was lost on the banana. For me, the score in the aroma wasn't a lack of pungency. It was a lack of smelling all the base ingredients. I couldn't detect the banana at all. I docked 2 points. It gets an 8 out of 10. For the taste, really enjoyed the flavor on this beer as well. Very enjoyable sour. Had nice sour and tart up front, just as the prior beer, and the fruit came through quite fully. The only problem with this one was, again, same thing with the aroma. The banana was just not detectable at all. They may as well have not put it in the beer. I couldn't pick it up at all in the aroma or the flavor. And that was a real letdown. I love banana. It's one of my favorite foods in the world. And I love it in beers. It doesn't work in all beer styles, but it certainly does here. And they added that much banana, I couldn't pick it up. It was a real shame. The guava came through quite clearly though. Passion fruit, you could just pick it up on the back end just as you could in the aroma. I give it above average overall. It gets a 7. For the body, same as with the first beer. it gets a perfect 10 out of 10 for the exact same reasons. Mouthfeel, yet again another category where it gets top marks for the exact same reasons. Their beers are very consistent. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the finish, yet again, here's another category. I mean, Urban Artifact Fruited Sours, you come to know what to expect when you've had a few. The flavors really do linger. This was no exception. It gets a 10 out of 10. Head and retention was pretty much just like the first beer. It tried to start ahead and immediately got out of the way. That's what I want to see. It gets a 10 out of 10. Appearance-wise, this one was a mix of guava, passion fruit, and banana. Surprisingly, this one was a bit more pinkish in hue, pinkish red in hue, than the first beer was, which had strawberry, which naturally has red rinds. Sure, there's a bit of darker reddish orange color in the pink guava, so you can make an argument, but frankly, competing against strawberry, I didn't expect it to be a darker, more pinky orange hue, but it was. It was lovely. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance on this beer was a category that really lost some points for me, and really, it's not that the beer overall wasn't balanced well, it was. It was really when we're talking the banana and the passion fruit. The banana was not detectable at all in the aroma or in the flavor profile. That for me was a real letdown. I actually got this beer because of the banana, because it's one of my absolute favorite ingredients. And not picking it up either in the flavor or the aroma was disappointing. Not that that'll make or break a beer. It was very enjoyable, but in terms of balance, you're going to take the time to put these extra ingredients in. It takes more time, rises the cost, and I can't even pick it out. That's disappointing. Passion fruit, I could get just a hint on both the aroma and the flavor, but it wasn't enough. It was very guava dominant. They may as well have just made this a guava sour, frankly, for all that I got out of the passion fruit and the banana. In terms of balance, I enjoyed the beer, but it wasn't balanced based on the ingredients they put in. It's just average, it gets a 5. Feeling in the Intangible, I did enjoy the beer. It's a good beer, just as all Urban Artifact sours are that I've had, and I've had plenty now. Really, for me, the problem came to balance equation. The banana and the passion fruit, they needed more of it in there to counteract the guava. They may as well have just made this a guava sour because, frankly, the extra time and added cost that goes into it, and then you get your hopes up and then those ingredients don't come through, is a little bit of a letdown. I still gave it above average. I gave it a 7. Finally, as an example of the style, Urban Artifact does great fruited sours. No exception here. Really though, where it did lose points were critical for me. Came down to the balance of the ingredients they put into it and really how they interplayed in the beer. The not detecting the banana anywhere in the flavor or the aroma was a real letdown. It was a real disappointment. I was very much looking forward to that, and it did not come through at all. And it was disappointing. Same thing with the passion fruit. I would have liked more of that. I realized that the guava was the lion's share of the ingredient bill, which frankly is a more expensive ingredient than banana is. Bananas are cheap. May as well throw more in there. It clearly wasn't going to overpower. But nonetheless, it just missed the mark on a few categories here. Again, I still thought it was above average for a fruited sour. I gave it a 7. That brings the total score on Urban Artifact's Fire Iron to an 84 out of 100. There's an 11-point spread here. Both good beers, don't get me wrong. I did nitpick some categories on both of them and had specific gripes about both of them, but overall, both great beers. Urban Artifact does a great job. Certainly if you're a fan of their beers, their fruited sours, or you just like the style in general, I think you absolutely would enjoy both of these beers. Just to be mindful of what you're going to get when you grab them. This one, balance was an issue for the ingredients for me. This one was pretty much top tier. It only missed the mark on a couple spots, but overall, really enjoyed both beers. Another great selection of Urban Artifact fruited sours. Folks, as always, I sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to keep in the loop when our videos go live to YouTube, you can just click the notification bell. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.